215, we get myself included. I have a deputy EM director. We have a a communications director for our millstone drills. They get a stipend per year. Longevity actually went down this year from last year because Mr. Morris retired. Building maintenance, we have generators that we have to repair, so it's kind of a cost we have for our generator that we got a grant for. We have to repair maintenance on it once a year. I have two mobile generators that we get a maintenance on every year, and we have 2 generators at 2 of our radio sites that get taken care of every year. Our radio maintenance contract is going up 3%. Telephones, there is an increase in telephones. We did buy a new telephone system. It's about, I think it's 4 years old now, so we're going into a contractual where we need a maintenance agreement on it, and that's the $2,000. But that covers all the phones within our building that we can transfer down to the new building if we get it. One question I had was item 244. Currently, we do not have a CERT training at all. We're looking to see if we can change that item to defibrillators. We currently take care of all the AEDs in town. We've had problems where they've popped up where right before celebrating Lyme, the one at the PD died. Knowing that we're going to have a large amount of people on the street that day, we had to go out and purchase an AED, which is about $800. We've never had a line item for that or buying pads or anything like that, so we weren't sure where to put it. And since we haven't been using the CERT training, if we do have an AED fail, now we have a place where we can, if one fails, we can obviously fix it. Uniforms are $1,200. I believe that's the same. Miscellaneous supplies, that comes out of all our stuff. Realistic, most of it comes out for downstairs and dispatch. All our hardware and stuff downstairs, the stuff that we keep up to date daily, cables and internet, our PSDN, our Nutmeg network, all come out of that account for the internet, for the connections. So one nice thing is that'll be decreasing if the referendum passes. Well, instead of being 2 buildings, be 1. So a lot of, like you said, smaller stuff will add up over time, I think. We'll see a savings.
So what comes to mind or what's pinging in my head, I got to get it out so I can hear what you're saying.
Sure.
Because I got to get this out. If the referendum does pass, can you work on some numbers for me, thinking about what that phone system in the new building will do for us as far as savings goes, or expenses, if we need to go out and buy hardware so that we can save phone bills? Let's talk about a recalc with some of, because we're operating out of 2 different locations right now. Let's talk about that, because the Board of Finance is going to be looking for more detailed, since the reality will be there. Now, we don't know when we're moving, so we don't know how long the build-out would be, so we can't just say savings and take that out, but at least we'll know where we're heading, and that will be important.
One, I said we really bought the backbone of the whole system, so any cost would be just cabling and a new phone.
And a new phone on the desk. I get it.
We have the voicemails and everything like that already.
Okay. You're good? Good. Questions?
Just, you had mentioned about the generator maintenance, and so does each communication tower have to have a backup generator?
We do, yes.
And how many towers do we have?
We have 2 that have generators on them.
Okay. And in the discussion about if the referendum passes, they're going to do a trunk line instead of a tower, is that right?
Well, we still have the towers that we currently have now. Those would
Right.
still be there.
But we won't have, if we do a trunk line, we won't have to build the 3rd tower, is that right?
I believe so, yeah. We had some communications with a radio company that could come in and go through the PSDN network.
Yeah.
So
we would
those
avoid
discussions
that,
are in place right
Maybe,
now.
yeah.
If it passes. Thank you.
The generator at your current EOC, can that be moved?
It could be. It's a 65 kW generator if there's a need for it.
Well, it
No
gets-
sense being there.
No,
Well,
we can move it anywhere.
The question is it size enough to carry the whole load of the new building?
I don't think so.
I don't think so, but
No.
could it go to another facility that needed it, another building?
Okay. Right.
It's,
Could you use 2 generators, use the old one and the new one, and cut the building in half? And
Usually, one generator is less switch gear.
Yeah.
Right.
But you could use it at another facility.
Depending on how that building's
Yeah.
wired, though. It could be, you could split it, but it all depends.
Okay.
And we did get that one on a grant, so it is a newer generator.
Yeah, I know. I remember it being new. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
It's about
It'd
5
be
years
great
old
to
now.
save the expense of in the renovation is to be able to utilize it somehow.
Definitely.
I know you have questions.
Just clarification for my lack of knowledge. On the 211, Does that 91.7 include the stipend for the chief, or no?
It does,
Okay.
the
so-
$10,000, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Mr. Siri?
I'm good.
You good as well? Great job, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your service. Thanks for all the good work you do. Niantic's up first. John, I said 8 o'clock. It's 8:09.
Pretty good.
I'm getting good at this. We have a newly elected chief of fire of Niantic Fire Department. No longer acting chief, but the chief, confirmed and elected. So welcome, John
you.
Dwyer.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
This is his
very
first go round up here. This is a budget he kind of inherited through the process, but also put finishing touches on, and you own it.
I had 6 days to put this budget together.
Okay.
So, I had a lot of help between you and Chief Ricks. So, a little shout out to him.
Yeah, we nice to see us all working together, and boy, does that make things go smoother when everyone's working together. And it's, don't forget, we're civilians up here, and in the Board of Finance too, so it makes it easier when we see things working together. So tell us about this budget. This is a significant increase, and maybe you could walk us through that.
So this year's budget is in anticipation of hiring a full-time nighttime firefighter to supplement our shortfall, some of our shortfalls with our volunteers. Over the years, our call volumes are increasing, and unfortunately, our volunteers aren't. And so, working with East Lyme Ambulance and the town, Flanders Fire Department, we are currently working together to try to hire one full-time firefighter that would be downtown, and then Chief Ricks will speak of his firefighter up north and the town. So that budget increase in the full-time firefighters budget shows, that's what that increase shows.
Correct. So that it's fully.
So I
Fully
budgeted
funded,
fully
100%.
funded for that, with the anticipation that the East Lyme Ambulance fund would, and the town would come to some sort of agreement with.
So we have lawyers working on that agreement, because the fine details are important on this, and that will be brought to you. Obviously, we can't get agreement together. This would come out of their budget. And obviously, if the Board of Selectmen votes no on this agreement, it would come out of the budget too. So I'm not forcing it on you as much as I'm anticipating, if it should pass, this would be the budget, and we want to slip it in now, starting on July 1st, the new fiscal year. Walk us through the rest of the stuff, and then if there are other questions on this
So-
agreement, we can go back to it.
There's a slight increase in my part-time budget, and that's just to try to incorporate, to try to be where we need to be as far as covering shifts during the day with our full-time personnel. We have, and then with increases in salaries and et cetera. So we made that slight increase there, 0.8. The overtime went up, and that is just significantly 54.2%. And that's just because of the anticipation of the nighttime firefighter. He has, our firefighters work 9-hour days, 8-hour days, plus a 1-hour overtime, and that's all contractual. So that fills contractual obligations as well. Our longevity increased because of contractual obligations. One of the newest firefighter, he moved from probationary to, oh no, I'm sorry, that's not that one. Firefighter Worthington, his longevity pay increased. OSHA, our increases are, increased that to $1,000 from last year, and that's just because of costs associated with maintenance, maintaining our equipment, our SCBA's, Plymouth vent systems, filters, filtrations, et cetera. All that, that's seen I've incurred a increase in that, so I budgeted for that increase. Vehicle maintenance has remained the same, although, as many of you are aware, I am dealing with a truck that's about 32 years old.
34?
34 years old.
Yeah.
But so far so good. It's still running and it's still doing a job, but it's definitely something we need to keep an eye on.
And you'll see its replacement in your capital plan, folks. You're gonna get that later in your budgets. But there's a 34-year-old truck that, at this point, needs to be retired.
I kept my radio maintenance the same, and that's just to replace radio batteries, do any radio maintenance. If somebody drops their pager, one of the volunteers in the middle of the night falls down the stairs, or crazy things happen sometimes. It'll get run over. We don't want them to get run over, but it is in the course of the day. Things happen and accidents happen, and I need money to obviously fix those issues so we can keep those volunteers that do show up showing up. One of the line items here, you're going to see you're going to go, wow, huge increase of 100%. But I turn your attention to line 240, where you'll see a 0. What I did was I combined the building systems maintenance budget with the building maintenance budget. Essentially, a building maintenance budget is a building maintenance budget, and I didn't see any need for both of those line items, so I just merged them into one. With no increases in that. Miscellaneous equipment, again, station supplies, etc. That's where that comes out of. Training's a huge part of what we do. Fire prevention, we hold open houses once a year. We go to the schools. We bring the smoke trailers to Ninex Center and Lily B. Haynes. We work with the Flinders Fire Department with some things as well. But together, we're both providing public education, and we're also providing training for our members that's needed, that is required, and is needed to get these guys up and going from step 1 to step 2, et cetera. Telephone budget remains the same. I kind of talked to you about that, but I guess maybe we'll talk about that next year. Fuels, East Lyme Ambulance in the town had signed an agreement for fuels, so there's no increase. That line item is 0. You do see the increase in uniforms from 4,500 last year to 5,500 this year, and that's just the anticipation of that new firefighter. I got out him with new uniforms and et cetera, that's where that increase came from. And again, miscellaneous supplies, if I need paper towels, toilet paper, et cetera.
Flat stuff. Let's go back to your overtime budget, because you're going to have a tough time selling that and getting through the process. I know you're going to have an increase because you're putting it on one in your budget, overtime. But your actual last year, actual 18 expense was $71,000. You're at 67. We actually brought it down a little this year. And I don't know if I have what we're trending to, Anna. I don't know if you had looked at it. Why? That's a dramatic increase.
I think in each of the fire department budgets, there's a very comprehensive detail of how all of the wage amounts were come up with, so you can see how those numbers are calculated. So for the overtime, it includes each full-time firefighter gets a guaranteed 260 hours of overtime. They're working an extra hour each day. So that, multiply that by 52 weeks, that's 260 hours. And then in the budget is also included an additional 100 hours of overtime for each firefighter. So that includes when they're held over on shifts because they might be out at an incident, or if there's a storm and they're required to work additional hours, or for any training that might be required. So that's how that number was calculated.
Any other questions? We might have to address that.
Yeah, one thing too is, with the increase in the salary line for firefighters, some of that's gonna be, taken care of by if we come to that agreement with the, yeah.
The revenue's down below, $72,000 in revenue.
So the revenue too.
Coming from the
So,
ambulance.
yeah, so I think it's really good to make sure we highlight that too. And if there is a part of that 10313, 314, I think it'd be good to try and isolate that too. Okay, out of that 103,000 for overtime that you're requesting, what part of that would be covered by, out of that 103? I know we have the total figure for revenue down the bottom, but just to isolate right on those two line items, 611 and 614, show what percent is going to be covered in that for those two areas, so that we can see that number right there.
You're speaking, so you want it broken down between their base pay with their overtime?
Right. I think that would help people, especially Board of Finance people looking at this. They'll say, okay, I see what you mean here, because the number's at the bottom for the revenue, but it might be nice to see how it's broken down a little bit at the top as well. 'Cause that's all. And that was the only observations I had.
Okay.
When you consider the revenue, it's about only a 6% increase.
I saw that, 6.5%.
6.5, right, so it's not a
You all
big
figured
increase.
that out?
Yeah.
Took me a while, but I did too. And I still can't buy into this overtime number. Especially, I know some of it will be coming out of the ambulance revenue, but that increase of 54%, going from 67, sure, we're gonna put another firefighter on. How much does another firefighter get in overtime? What is it? What does the average firefighter get in overtime a year?
$260 planned, right, an hour a day.
$22,000?
I mean, through, the department's already spent about 49,000 this year.
That's the problem.
So I should have mentioned that too, is that the increase is because of, and I'm not gonna point fingers, but the budget I'm working with now is not the budget that I created, and it's not a budget that is truthful to what we're spending. So the budget increase in the overtime budget is adjusted because that's the truer number up to where it needs to be. So I don't have to come back next year at this time and ask for more money with what I have. So that's increasing with what I have, and that's increasing with what I'm anticipating to have come July 1. So that's why that overtime budget has increased.
Okay.
I had, a EMT class refresher, just to give you an example, is 32 hours, and that's overtime. And they have to have that refresher every 3 years. I had 2 members this year that needed it, 2 full-time members needed it this year, and I'll have 2 members that need it next year. So all that's gotta be configured into as well. As storm coverages, we've been lucky this year, weren't so lucky last year. So it's a very fine line, but I need to be truthful and honest with you and anticipate those storms and anticipate those shortfalls, and that's why those numbers are the way that they are. It would be irresponsible of me not to provide you with a truthful number, what I see that would outfit staffing and allow for adequate response times in doing so.
So Anna, you said 44,000 so far to date this year?
49.
40, so 50, and we're two
If
thirds
you
of the way,
look- if
two
you
thirds of
look-
the way through the year. So that's 75.
If
We
you
were
look
71
at,
and 18, and we're jumping up 28,000.
To 103, that's where it doesn't make sense.
so if you look at this, you have the detail, and on the second page, it highlights the overtime. So, so for next year, with the additional firefighter, you'd be looking at a contract obligation of $57,430. Then for holiday pay, whenever they're off on a holiday and we have to have either they come in or somebody else comes in, that's almost $24,000. And then the 100 hours of unscheduled is a little over 22,000. So that's how the calculation of 103 is there for you.
But I believe the calculations, but how do you jump from 71?
If they're actual, what they've actually
Actual.
been spending, have we put those in other columns? Have we taken it out of another place?
Last year, was anybody out for a period of time?
Well,
Yeah,
we
that's-
did, it was last year, right? Well, we did hire Wick Halen last year, and then Ron Pringle retired, and we had a lot of increase there.
But if you had an increase, when you say last year, you're talking 18 or you're talking?
Last
Eight.
fiscal year.
About a year
Right,
ago.
But that was, if you had an increase then at 71, why? did
You lost
do
it in the salary and you picked up somewhere else.
I-
I know, I gotta look at this too. It doesn't make sense, and I know what you're saying, but,
You would think another
Yeah.
full-timer, even though they come with the required overtime, may cut some of your other overtime needs from what you were doing for your part-time folks. I don't know. with an extra
108
body.
hours of holiday shouldn't come out of overtime. They're putting part-timers on, right? Yeah, come on up, Bill. Chief of Flanders has been at it for quite a while, as his family has, so he has some of the answers that, it helped Chief Dwyer, so maybe you can fill me in.
Okay, so I helped Chief Dwyer with his budget as he came over midstream, and so the 54%, he's at 103. He's got 67,000 budgeted for regular overtime for 4 guys. I have 62 scheduled for 3 guys, and that's a realistic number for me for 3 guys. So 67 for 4 doesn't even cover what he needs to contractually out of the 5 hours, the holiday. So that 108 hours, more than most times, those guys are working the holidays, so they're getting that holiday pay on top of their regular pay for being there. They're not taking that day off, so they're getting that extra money. And the holiday pay comes out of that overtime account because that's where it's budgeted from. So if you look at mine, I'm jumping ahead, you guys, if you look at it, I'm at 62 for 3 guys. When I add the 4th, I go up to 84,000. So it's roughly 20,000 with the holiday, the 5 hours a week, and the 100 hours of unscheduled. So his 103 is mainly because he's not even where he should be with his 4 firefighters in overtime. And I know last year Steve had to come back and ask for more money because they ran short last year as well.
Okay. We'll look at it. It's still gonna be tough to sell.
I think, and see, last year, Pringle retired at the beginning of April.
Right.
So we weren't paying from until the new firefighter came on board, there was a period of time where we weren't
Right.
paying that extra hour of overtime on a daily basis for the week. So that, you know, sometimes when you have something like that go on with your regular full-time firefighters, it would, you know, have an effect on what you spend in some of those accounts.
The other thought is the overnight firefighters don't get overtime. And when we put them into the firefighter's contract and we're negotiating that it's an 8-hour shift. Because if ultimately, and maybe we should have this conversation tomorrow at my desk, I get it, but if we're eventually gonna be going to a full-time force, because as we've discussed, volunteers are going down and down and down. And in order to fully do this right, 10 or 20 years from now, we're gonna have 15 full-time firefighters on. Right now, we have 7.
So
So you're gonna be doubling your firefighting force in the next 10 or 15, 20 years, whatever. I'm looking out in the future. I'm not trying to grow anything right now. The town is not gonna be paying one contractual hour of overtime for 15 guys.
no, when you reach that number of
Yeah.
guys, you need to go to a rotating schedule.
A rotating-
Your
regular
salary-
schedule.
Your salary would be adjusted accordingly, where these guys work Monday to Friday
And they-
now, and that's how it's set up.
Right.
But looking at this again, like Anna said, I forgot, Ron was out for quite a while, so
Yeah.
that's why the overtime isn't as high, but you'll see the part-time hours are extremely higher than what was budgeted for, because a lot of the part-time hours picked up all of those hours that Ron was out. So that's why the overtime isn't as high as it should be, and the hours accumulated in the part-time money.
Okay.
So that would offset what should really be there for 4
Yep.
overtime.
Yeah, all right. It's heavy lifting. Any other questions? Let's get off the overtime. We're just gonna have to crunch some numbers and, don't go too far, Bill. Thanks for your help, too, Bill. Any other questions on this budget? For Chief Dwyer? John, you've done an amazing job over the last couple of months of stepping up and lifting up your fire department over here in Niantic, and then gaining the confidence of your fellow firefighters of getting elected chief. We appreciate your work. You are a full-time firefighter, and you're the captain?
A captain, yes.
A captain, one of the captains.
One of 6.
Of sub-base fire department.
Yes, sir.
New London. So, thank you for lending your talent over here.
Thank you.
To us. We appreciate your service.
Thank you all.
Last of the night is 218. I told you not to go far, Bill. Same diddly deal here. Firefighters jump up because we're adding a firefighter on, and you see the revenue down below. To offset that a tad, Bill, why don't you walk us through the rest of it?
Okay.
Chief Ricks,
Yeah,
everyone.
so I'll come back to the salaries, because that seems to be the longest discussion. Right off the bat, OSHA, we left at 14,000 with 0%. That covers all of our OSHA testing for hose, ladders, our air packs, if anything breaks, repairs that have to come out of there. That's associated with that. You'll note in the notes, I've gone back about 7 or 8 years. In our OSHA, we've been able to keep it 0% increase the last 3, and only a 90% increase the year before that. Vehicle maintenance, we have at $19,000, that's a 0%. For the last 7 years, this account has been as high as 18, down to 16, and then back up to 19,000 currently. Radio maintenance, we've kept at 2,000. We've been able to keep this account at 0% increase for the last 3 years, which is an overall 13% decrease from 5 years ago. Our building maintenance is $3,000. This, covers our garbage bags, cleaning supplies, and whatnot. We've been able to keep this account at a 0% increase for the last 4 years. Small equipment, anything that has to do with maintenance of the saws, generators, stuff like that. This account was created 5 years ago, and it was decreased by 20% 4 years ago. We've been able to keep it at 0% since then. Our training has gone up $500 after helping Chief Dwyer with his budget a little bit. We discussed the training. Our training should be aligned. Not one of us is doing anything different than the other guy. So he voluntarily took $500 off of his, and I'm asking for $500. So now we'll both be even in the training account. Other than that, until now, we've been able to keep this account at 0% increase for the last 7 years. Our telephones, I did go up because we now have a cell phone for myself as the department head to field all the calls through the town. We've been able to keep this account at 0% for the last 4 years. 2 years prior, we did have a cell phone for that chief at that time, and it was up to $2,500. And so I put it up to 26, estimating what phone costs now. I haven't had it that long, so. Again, fuels has been covered by the ambulance. For Selectmen, had asked them to cover fuels, and both departments voted unanimously to pass that. My uniforms has gone up $750 for the anticipation of the new hire overnight. And miscellaneous has stayed at $1,500. We've been able to keep this at 0% for the last 5 years as well. This is small stuff like office supplies, postage, batteries, stuff like that.